Welcome to InFocus with Ejaz Haider. This program is supported by the Center for Security, Strategy and Policy Research. CESPA is an autonomous policy research center housed in the University of Lahore and studies contemporary security and strategic developments. And this program is part of that effort. Now, Israel's war on Gaza has entered the ninth month, and cracks are widening between Benjamin Netanyahu's government and the military. The war cabinet already stands dissolved after former IDF chief and Israel Resilience Party chief Benjamin Benny Gantz left the cabinet, as did his Resilience Party colleague and also another former IDF chief, Gadi Eisenkot. In an interview to Khan News last Thursday, Eisenkot said staying would have been a betrayal of IDF soldiers. Tel Aviv and West Jerusalem are witnessing daily protests for a peace deal to bring the hostages back and to have new elections. But the most damaging statement has come from the serving IDF spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. In an interview to Israel's Channel 13 last Wednesday, Hagari said the idea that it is possible to destroy Hamas and to make Hamas vanish, that is throwing sand in the eyes of the public. Hamas is an idea. Hamas is a political party. It is rooted in the hearts of the people. Whoever thinks we can eliminate Hamas is mistaken. His comments got a predictable terse response from Netanyahu's office, which said Israel's security cabinet has defined the destruction of Hamas's military and governing capabilities as one of the aims of its war in Gaza. The IDF is committed to it. The IDF has also tried to downplay Hagari's comments but those comments actually echo assessments by many independent analysts that Israel's military campaign may be unable to achieve its stated war aims and that Hamas would remain a potent ideological force. But while we shall discuss the ongoing war in Gaza, Israel's daily raids in the West Bank and increasing tension with Hezbollah, today's discussion is also about the darkness that seems to have descended on Israeli society. From plunder, denial of the franchise, ghettoization, ethnic cleansing, and racist dehumanization of Palestinians, Israel has now moved to exterminationist violence. But what is really disconcerting is that it is cheered on by a majority of Israelis. And I have just the right analyst for this discussion. Alon Mizrahi. Mizrahi is an Israeli writer and political activist. His work seeks to reframe the discussion about Zionism and the history of the Middle East, from providing legitimacy and depth to anti-Zionism to telling the forgotten story of Arab Jews. So Alon's life has unfolded at the intersection of being an Israeli, a Jew, and an Arab. And that intersection is now the biggest question for the day after, if there is a day after. So, Alon, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me, Ejaz.
Pleasure. Let's start with the cracks that are appearing within the government and between Netanyahu's coterie of far right and other political opposition and also the military.
Okay, it's correct to speak about cracks in this sense, but it's not the whole picture.
Okay.
Because it's not that Netanyahu has one idea in mind and the IDF has another idea in mind, and we have two clear ideas clashing or trying to find the upper hand between them. I think that Netanyahu has no idea where he's leading. And the IDF, as would, I guess, any military force, even the most devout and unskeptical military force under the sun, there comes a day where commanders start thinking, I'm sending soldiers to the death. I'm committing great acts of violence. I'm killing people. I'm having soldiers killed, wounded. I have a public to answer to, not directly because I'm not standing for re-election, but these soldiers are part of society and they are part of my responsibility. And I think what we're seeing now is that the Israeli establishments are very late in the day, I have to say, are starting to realize that Netanyahu is leading them nowhere, to the abyss. Because what does it mean to continue this forever war and shed more blood and have more soldiers killed and drain the economy and create this really hellish landscape of a political culture? Where do we go from here? Can we have normal life with this war going on? And of course we can. So I mean, we can't. Of course we can't. So I think that the last remnants of clarity are trying to make themselves present in Israeli discourse through this clash that we see even from outside. But unfortunately, I don't think this is going to lead to big changes in the way things are unfolding on the ground.
So recently, we've seen, of course, the exchange of fire between Hezbollah and Israel has been going on since the start of the Israeli offensive on Gaza. But in the last 3-4 days, the momentum has kind of picked up, with Hezbollah actually sending a drone that went undetected. It flew over Haifa and other military installations that actually marked everything. And Hezbollah put it out, signaling to Israel that we've got the coordinates of all the important installations. So in the event that we are attacked, we are going to retaliate. And there's a White House statement which says that Netanyahu is now thinking of opening this front. What is your view? I mean, how probable, or I would say probable because it's certainly possible, how probable it is for this front to be opened?
I think it's more than probable. I think it's certain that it's going to a major war. But this is again goes to Netanyahu's, I would say, character, because Netanyahu is not a decision maker. Netanyahu is not a strategist. He's not a chess player, really. He just has this habit of letting things deteriorate and get to a boiling point as if on themselves, all of themselves. And so we can see that no one decided in Israel that we are going to war with Hezbollah or we are going to a limited confrontation. You have a sense that we are being dragged into it. And of course, the whole region is being dragged into it. And we have such a very alarming and sad lack of leadership in the sense of a clear picture where we want to go as a country, as a region. Where does Israel want to go? It's unclear. So we have this in Israel, but we also have this, and this is another very big and influential factor in this. We don't have leadership in the US as well. We have Biden, who is, I don't want to offend your viewers, but no one can seriously think this person is making decisions and is on top of things and knows what's going on and has the willpower to force his vision through different layers of government and military and so on. So we have this vacuum, a sort of vacuum, in which like more and more violence is allowed to happen, and this cannot but escalate further. This is my opinion.
Well, as far as Biden is concerned, he's been very clear for the last 50 years of his public life that he actually says that he's a Zionist. And he's also known to have said that there can never be daylight between the US and Israel. And of course, we have Professors Mearsheimer and Walt, who wrote that book, which became very controversial, about the Israeli lobby. And Professor Mearsheimer recently has been speaking a lot on this issue. And he's very clear that this is a relationship, the likes of which you possibly cannot cite anywhere in history between two states. So Biden is doing what comes natural to him, and of course Trump is a completely different story. So So you're right. There is that problem of leadership in the US. And you talked about the problem of leadership in Israel. But Alon, the thing is that if we go back, because nowadays some kind of contrast or contradistinction is being made between, let's say, quote unquote, the statesmanship of the Israeli left, and for instance, Yitzhak Rabin and others. But the fact is that if one delves deeper into history, no Israeli leader, starting with Ben Gurion, was ever prepared to give Palestinians the space in terms of sovereignty. That's very clear. 29 days before Rabin was assassinated, he spoke in Knesset about Oslo II, and he made it very clear that he wants peace, but there's going to be an administrative authority. The Palestinian Authority is not going to be a sovereign entity. So the issue goes back to what Professor Mamdani says, the nation state, which is essentially a colonizing state, which wants a majority that colonizes the minorities.
Yeah, this is exactly it, and I think this is. I've been saying it for a long time now, for a few years at least. I think this is going to be the poison pill for Israel's demise or destruction, which I can see is almost imminent. It is almost upon us. This is how serious things are. Because I think that if a war with Hezbollah does break, it's going to spell almost doom for Israel. It is going to be catastrophic, and I think not enough people realize this. I mean, just yesterday, the person handling the Israeli energy electric market,
Yeah.
a guy called Shaul Goldstein,
Yeah.
said we are living fantasy scenarios. Israel is not prepared for war of this kind. After 72 hours without electricity, Israel will become unlivable. These are actually his words, and this is the first serious statement I've heard about this potential conflict. You can see a kind of lightheadedness to this, and this is so huge. This
No,
is
but
so huge.
I'm happy you talked about that, because he was speaking at this conference in Sderot, and after he made the statement, the Israeli energy minister said, "No, we all good. We've
Yeah,
made all the arrangements and everything." And another CEO, whose name I forget, of another company, said, this guy should focus on his job, because ever since he has taken over as a CEO, the company is not doing very well. So my point is that anyone in Israel, I was reading this only last night in the Jerusalem Post, the statement that you're referring to. My point is that anyone in Israel uh, actually being critical of any policy of the Israeli government is now getting increasingly isolated and attacked. Whether it's Gideon Levy, who I forget his exact words, but I think he said that somebody asked him about how many people actually support what he says, and he said something about you can have the names in a phone book or some such thing.
yeah,
So there was a time, if we go back, like let's say 30 years or 20 years, where there was a lot of criticism, and you could hear critical voices in the academia also, and among journalists also. You had these former IDF soldiers who created this organization, which said that we need to have peace with the Palestinians and the rest of it. But increasingly, voices like yours are now isolated, and it's not just national. That's my observation, and correct me if I'm wrong. But while people protest, Netanyahu's policy or they want new elections. The fact is that the majority of Israelis want this savage, hellish war to go on, and they want to exterminate Palestinians.
I would say I would put it like this: the not the majority, almost the entirety of Israeli public, of Jewish. When we say Israelis, we mean Jews, but there are a lot of Palestinians inside Israel. Um, you wouldn't find almost a single Israeli who would say, if this is what my country is doing, I'm going to refuse to serve in the military forces. I'm going to disobey orders to kill innocent people, which is what you would expect from any military. This is, I would, maybe I'm naive, but this is my expectation. It doesn't matter in what army, what uniform you're wearing. If someone is telling you go and butcher those people, this village, this kindergarten, you have to say no. And this is, if you know this is what your military is doing as a policy, you can't be in this military. This is impossible. But Israel is such a conformist society, such a conformist society that no one is willing to say, to qualify, his loyalty or willingness to do what the country or its establishments demand of them. So Netanyahu operates in an environment where even when he says and does and leads the most insane, the most deranged policies, the most openly brutal and vile policies, he knows that no one will say, this is not even like creating a political opposition. This is a matter of conscience. This is me. So Netanyahu operates in an environment where he knows no one is going to say no, even about their own involvement. I'm not talking about a political party saying enough. So you have this kind of person at the helm leading the country where he knows he has limitless support from the US, and he also has limitless support from Israeli Jews who serve in the military and in all other establishments related to security or like half related to security, like medicine, like academia, and so on. And this creates such a dangerous environment, because any ruler needs to know there are bounds to their power, no matter what country, what era. If they don't feel it, they feel emboldened to pursue whatever like lunatic idea gets into their heads.
Right.
And
So let's
yeah,
let's leave Netanyahu aside for a while, and
and
let me
this is not.
try.
I have to just add a sentence. It's not
Yeah,
about
sure.
Netanyahu. I mean, Netanyahu is at the center of this as a figure, but it's really about Zionism. It's really about the Israeli
Precisely.
society, because
Precisely.
people need to agree to this. People need to accept this. That this is their existence, and Israelis have been brainwashed to an amazing degree. I've said it many times. But this is a major failure of Zionism as a political ideological movement, because if you don't allow for dissent, even in the clearest humanitarian circumstances, then your ideology is off the table. It can't be discussed seriously. I mean, in Israel, we love so much this notion, this idea, this period in history where other people saved Jews during World War II, during the Holocaust, and especially Albanian Muslims. This is like the big famous country, and the Albanians take pride in it. They say, we as Muslims, no Albanian Jew, and even Jews who immigrated to Albania during the war, we never gave one Jew to the Germans. They never got one. So you have different cultures and different contexts. You have to have this place for dissent in certain cases. You can't have this kind of totalitarian control over everything and everyone and every act. And but this all connects to the dehumanization of Palestinians, which is, it started even before 1948. This precedes Ben Gurion. This is the very first, for even Herzl's work, the big author of Zionism. When you the minute you have this idea, I'm going to go from Europe, from Berlin, from Vienna, from Warsaw to Palestine. I'm going to create my state, and you don't consider for a minute, what about all those people who are there right now? How do I bring them in? How do I include them in my plans? Even if you have this messianic idea that this is your homeland and you have to go back to it, and you have this religious right, okay, I get it, but there are people there. What about them? You
Precisely.
can you
And
can work with them. Yeah.
and I'm actually going to come to that, because I think you absolutely the best person to talk about it. But let me go back to, because we've gone back further back from Ben Gurion. So Herzl, an atheist, talks about this old new land, writes this novel, not of much literary merit, but a very interesting novel nonetheless, where Rashid Bey is the Arab engineer, is the only Arab voice in that novel. And King's Court and Prince, they come, and they after 20 years they return to this land, and they see this new society where everyone is living in harmony, and it's all hunky dory. And he even asks Rashid Bey, "How come as a Muslim you accept these Jews?" And he says, "Well, they have given us a lot, and I have nothing against them. I mean, they have not taken anything from us." Now that was Herzl's idea. But whatever one might say about the father of right-wing Zionism, Jabotinsky, he was more pragmatic. He understood the fact that there was not going to be this kind of coexistence.
Yeah.
And so he talked about the iron wall, and he talked about the ethics of the iron wall and the rest. But now we have moved even further right, where it's very clear that river to the sea, and this is what people accuse Palestinians and others of saying, "Oh, we want to annihilate Israel from river to the sea." But the fact of the matter is that the right-wing Israelis are talking about river to the sea, right up to Transjordan, right up to Lebanon, right up. I mean, the map that Netanyahu took to the United Nations, and he actually brandished that map at the UN. It had no West Bank, it had no East Jerusalem, it had no Gaza, it had no Galilee. I mean, the entire place was Israel. Somebody asked Menachem Begin about what the boundaries of Israel are, and he said, "Well, they're all given in the Bible." So we go back to this whole idea of where Zionism gets wedded to Eretz Yisrael, and that is where the extermination idea sort of gets in. I mean, that's my observation from afar. You are obviously, as I said, you are at the intersection of being an Israeli, a Jew, and an Arab. So you are best positioned to actually explain to my viewers what this is.
I mean, everything you said is correct. I mean, you framed it right. But I think there's an added layer to understanding this, which is super important, and you as a Pakistani will immediately get it. The white colonialism is such a big part of it, because I don't think anyone in history maybe had this kind of attitude, like white colonizers, like in the New World, in the Americas, in India, what was India and now is a few countries. that they can create, like almost engineer the human landscape to the best of their fantasies, however they feel like. They can move populations from here to there and decide these people are going to get this and these people are not going to get this. We're going to allow this. But who are you and what are you doing here exactly? What are you doing? What is the East India Company doing in India in the 1800s? So, so they were. I mean, this whole description of Herzl, you can hear very clearly this Germanic, white European concept of
Yeah,
this very exotic and very Edward Said, Edward Said kind of description of the Orientalist description of the people. I'm gonna be nice to them, and then they're gonna love me, but then they don't stop for a minute to think, this is not my home. I can maybe be a guest. And if I want to be part of society, maybe they'll accept me, but I have to learn the rules. And this thought doesn't cross their mind at all. And when this is your starting point, and you add the Bible and this idea of Jewish exceptionalism, which is so you can see so clearly in American exceptionalism, very similar. I'm different from all of humanity. Well, what makes you so different? What is this? So you have this exceptionalism, which is like rooted in like divine choice, right? God made me special and gave me this privilege to do whatever I want in this part of the world, and maybe not just in it, maybe in other places, because I'm God's chosen one wherever I go, right? Not only in Palestine. So you have an accumulation of ideas that cannot but drive a society insane. I mean, this couldn't have gone any other way. So this is to qualify again what I said about Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the like the culmination of the narratives. And this is why he is so successful, because he represents the collective consciousness of Zionism.
absolutely.
And
And
so,
that seems to have seeped into the society also, which is what makes his job so much easier.
exceedingly easy, because to really dispute Netanyahu, you have to renounce Zionism.
Yeah,
You have to have a different view of, I mean, you have to have a different view of Jewish history, because the this propaganda of Jewish history that we keeps being repeated to us, it's not the truth. This is maybe true for a period of time for Ashkenazi Jews in Europe. This wasn't true for Arab Jews in the Middle East.
yeah.
So
The
hundreds of
discussion
thousands of Jews lived in the
it's,
Middle East in
it's really
relative peace.
interesting. It's really interesting that this discussion is exactly going in the direction that I wanted it to go. And just for our viewers in this part of the world, Alon used the term Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi is a Hebrew word for German, and so it refers to the Jews that came from Germany, Russia, Eastern Europe, and they were the ones who immigrated to came to Israel, not as an immigrants but as settlers, um, because there's a difference, as Professor Mamdani says, between the immigrant who comes and gets absorbed in the existing society and the settler who comes armed and actually steals the land. So there are the Ashkenazis, and then there are the Sephardi, which is a Hebrew word for Spain, and the Jews that came from Spain after the Muslim rule there ended, and they came to North Africa, and then there's the subgroup, the Mizrahi, which Alon's surname also is, and so Ashkenazim uh, was the civilizing also of the Sephardi and the Mizrahi, because these were the Eastern, quote unquote, uncivilized Jews that needed to be Europeanized by the
Yeah.
Ashkenazi. There's a great documentary by Essam Bilan. It's called Israel's Great Divide. And I just want to quote something which Professor Yehuda Shenchev, who's an Iraqi Jewish scholar, academic, said there, and he was talking about Sabra and Shatila, the massacre there, and he said, and I quote from what he said, "Since then, I have rejected my Zionism. I think I was a Zionist until then, but I had a gradual political awakening. I started by reading and then writing about these issues and reconnecting with what I used to deny. I'm embarrassed to say it now, but I denied my Arab roots. Talking about yourself as an Arab in Zionist Israel is suicide." And the camera goes to various Mizrahi Jews, for instance, Rabbi Chaim Amsalim, who migrated from Algeria. There's a great book by another Iraqi Jewish scholar, Israeli American, Ella Habiba Shohat. So let's talk about this, Alon, because I want my viewers to understand that Israel is not a monolith. But I also want, as you explain this whole background to our viewers, I also want you to inform us of how much the Mizrahi Jews have been indoctrinated and their services in the Israeli military.
You have to get this picture. This is the picture. Imagine Jews living in Morocco for well over 1,000 years. Okay? They become native completely. I was to Morocco and I visited synagogues centuries old. This means you go to a place of prayer where your father went and your grandfather and his father and so on and so forth. And you only speak, it's not only, you speak Arabic all the time and you use some Bible Hebrew for prayer. But your everyday language is Arabic. You speak Arabic, you write in Arabic, and this is your language. This is your culture. This is your music. This is your food. This is your community. This is your whole perception, because there's a whole philosophy of what it means. Culture gives us this meaning to life, to being human. You get it through culture. And like in one day, they are told to pack their bags, which was the case for many Moroccan Jews. And you are going to Israel tomorrow morning. After you, this is all you know. This is your life. This is your land. This is your landscape. Tomorrow morning, a bus will come and pick you up, taking you to the port, and the ship is going to take you to Marseille in France, and then to Haifa. And when you land in Israel, in this newly founded state, you are being told that Arabs are now your arch enemy. I mean, my grandfather was a shopkeeper in Casablanca. So I'm thinking about this. They were telling him his next door neighbor, okay, is now his fiercest enemy. The people he grew up with and played in the street with. Now he has to hate them, and he has to shed all this dirty culture of Arabs, of Islam, which is now like the big threat. I mean, Islam really, for many periods of its existence, really embraced Jews and cooperated with Jews. And many of the great Jewish scholars lived during Islam, and they like the golden age of Islam, which was the golden age of Judaism. And so this 1,000 years or longer for Yemenite Jews, they have been in Yemen for over 2,000 years. And Iraqi Jews, I mean, the Talmud was written in Iraq like 1,800, 1,700 years ago. So they have all this background, all this history. This is everything they know about the world and about themselves. But the minute they land in this newly founded state, they created this state like 5 minutes ago. This is 1949 or 1951 or 52. And then they tell you the language you speak is dirty. Don't speak this language here. But this is my language. This is how I know culture and life. This is how I explain society to myself. You can't speak it. And even your accent, when you speak Hebrew, your Moroccan accent or your Iraqi accent or your Yemenite accent is laughable. We don't talk like that. It's primitive. Why do you talk like that? And actually, Arab Jews were the only ones who spoke Hebrew as it was supposed to sound. This is what Hebrew sounded similar to Arabic. There are Semite languages which sound similar and have many similar sounds. But the Ashkenazi, when they recreated the Hebrew in their image, they made it sound European, even in the way they stress words. They created this whole mechanism so that the language sounds European and not Middle Eastern. And so you have to give up your language. You have to give up your history. You have to give up. And also, there's this whole layer of white supremacy inside the Jewish world, because your skin color is dirty. You're brown. You're not white because you come from Morocco, or Yemen, or Iraq, or Lebanon, or Syria. You're not. In many cases, you're brown, and so you're inferior. And you come from Muslim countries and not European countries. And there are more and more layers to this supposed inferiority. And I mean, from a Jewish perspective, this is such a mockery of history and understanding, because for so many centuries, the center of Jewish life was in the Arab and Muslim world. The greatest rabbis, the greatest preachers, the greatest poets and writers, they lived in Andalusia under Muslim rule, but they lived in Morocco, they lived in Tunisia, in Algeria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, and Syria. But Zionism told you all of this means nothing. And you don't even need to be, if you want to be a modern Jew, you need to be secular. Throw your Judaism to the garbage. It means nothing. This is, by the way, why such resentment or even hate is felt by so many Mizrahi Jews, because they feel that by hating I don't want to say hating Ashkenazi Jews, by hating this socio-economic political section of society, they are reclaiming their own history and their own identity, which was taken from them in the 50s by the parents and grandparents of this socioeconomic layer or part of society.
So it's very interesting. I want to come in here for a bit because, as you know, since October 7th, there's been a lot of these debates around the world about anti-Zionism being anti-Semitism, and which is actually laughable, frankly. But the fact is that it is there, and there was very recently a monk debate in Canada on this whole issue. I mean, the proposition was that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Now, from what you said, clearly there was an attempt to conflate these two issues in order for the state of Israel, because it calls itself the Jewish state, for any criticism of the state of Israel to automatically become anti-Semitism. But from what you said, it's very clear that within Israel, there was also another exercise, there is also another exercise of creating what I would call a homo Ashkenazi of everyone. The Sephardi, the Mizrahi, and all of them have to basically lay waste to their histories, their culture, their language, their traditions, their cuisine, everything, and try and become Europeanized like Ashkenazi. But still, the Ashkenazis still do not accept the Mizrahi as Ashkenazi. So that kind of divide remains in real social political life.
Yeah, it's still very relevant, and I mean, from in terms of a historical perspective, there's an interesting process going on, because the principles of Zionism, and not only the principles, the principles that made Israel and guided it. I mean, the occupation, the settlement, the agriculture to an extent, taking over land and erasing Palestinian history as well, or mainly. The security philosophy, the whole thing was created by Ashkenazi Jews, all of it. I mean, in 1967, when Israel occupies the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip again, it was a totally Mapai Ashkenazi government. So, and they started the settlements. I mean, the religious right is also a purely Ashkenazi creation. It's an Ashkenazi ideology. But when their ideology, when they lost power, because Mizrahim became, I don't know, they didn't become the majority, but they become a big part of society. And now this section of society, which I spoke about before, now they're beginning to dissociate themselves from the realities of Israel, which they really created. And now they are trying to blame it on Mizrahim. They really blame the brown people for what they have done, for what their group has done throughout the years. And this is an interesting process that you see now starting to take shape. And I have no doubt, I'm saying this for history, I have no doubt that if Israel actually gets destroyed, they will blame it on the Likudniks, people who voted for Bibi from the Israeli periphery. Not the sophisticated urban types, but them, the simple Israelis who were disenfranchised and had so much taken away from them. So of course they'll become resentful. Of course they become hateful. This is what happens to people when you push them out of society, out of recognition, out of acknowledgement. You strip them of their humanity, of their identity. What do you expect, really? What's going to happen? But the Mizrahim never had actual political power in Israel, and to this day, when the military spokesperson Hagari says what he says, this is unattainable. What Netanyahu's goals are unattainable. He's trying to represent this group. If you want to look at it from like an Israeli sociological look, this is him trying to represent this group, which now tries to portray itself as responsible and peace-loving and peace-seeking. But they never refused. This is the point. They never said no. They started the occupation. They created Israel in their image. This whole obsession with weapons. Why did Israel become a global hub for weapons and spy programs? This is not destiny, right? Someone chose this as a strategy. They could have chosen otherwise. They could have made Israel a global center for conflict resolution. We developed the best dialogue mechanisms to solve any issue worldwide, or solve hunger, or solve whatever you want. Become a fashion hub. I don't know, but they chose this, and now all these, these chickens are coming home to roost.
So, Alon, I mean, I'd love to keep discussing these issues with you, and bilaterally, of course, we can and we will. But since I'm moving towards closing this episode, I want to ask you two questions. One is with reference to this ongoing savagery in Gaza. and the possibility or the probability of another front opening. And secondly, given where the conscience, the collective conscience has gone, and the darkness that has descended on the Israeli society, where do you think the Israeli society is headed?
This, what we're seeing now is really a culmination of processes that have been in the works for a very long time. As I've said before, this is started from since Herzl. This is the natural result of Herzl's work and the Zionist conventions and all this really stupid ideas that they had. Um, this is the end result. When you start dehumanizing people, this is where you get. You can't. There's no halfway, like half measure. I'm gonna only gonna take this from you, but other than that, I'm gonna treat you normally. This doesn't work. The minute you start dehumanizing another group, this leads to genocide, 100%. Um, and I'm talking to you, and I'm having the I see Indian propaganda in the like the recent period of time, and I see very similar kind of insanity.
Yeah.
The way they talk about Muslims, and I don't know enough about Pakistan to know if there's like a Pakistani equivalent. I've never seen it, but I don't know. But I have seen it in India. It's very powerful, and I know where this leads. I know where this leads. This is not only about Kashmir, even though Kashmir is a very big deal, but it's not only about that. This leads to very dark places, and I'm happy Modi's party got a little less power this time around, and I really, really hope for India and for like this is global, that these tendencies don't take root, and this doesn't become India, because this you can't do this and remain whole. The destruction of the other leads inevitably to your own destruction. And this is answering your second question. I think the degree to which Israelis dehumanized Palestinians, this total dehumanization, this total disregard for life and dignity and children. I mean, have you ever seen children getting blown to pieces like this? This is what is
Well,
this?
the entire world is being told that Israel is the most moral army, that they select targets very carefully, that they even drop leaflets and say, go from this place to another place. And I mean, the, the apologists for Israel in the West, in the US, elsewhere are, constantly telling us that there is nothing. Well, they are telling us that it's Hamas that uses
Yeah.
civilians as human shields.
I think that this is another part of the discussion we haven't talked about. Maybe we'll talk it in a different time. I think that this whole range of excuses of apologetics is really losing power. And if you look at it from a global perspective, because I think that the dominance of the US in like handling global affair is fast diminishing. I'm happy about it, and there are many other people who are happy about it. And I think this conflict, as I see it, marks it's like a turning point in the relationship between the global north and the global south. I think that this really affirms what the global south has been saying for a very long time. You don't own morality. You're just hypocrites. You don't mean what you say. We have democracy. We have rules of engagement. We have all this nonsense, all this copywriting, which means nothing. And when
Your,
this is
your detractors,
exposed,
your detractors will say, well, this is the Arab in Alon Mizrahi speaking. He's an Arab, so he speaks like an Arab.
they
So
can say they can say whatever, but what the takeaway is when the power dynamics shift, the conversation shifts, and
correct.
the actual power dynamics, it's not propaganda anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia cannot be, or China, or Iran, they can't be toyed with. They can't be sold propaganda and finger pointing. Do your sanctions. Say whatever you want. So, and there's not much the West can do about it. Not much. They have the people, they have the technology, and I think that now they have a sense of purpose, morally so. Morally so. This is what this genocide does to this conversation. And I think Israel, just one more sentence. I think Israel, it's going to take a miracle for Israel not to disintegrate. This is what I'll say.
So you basically afraid that it's going to get worse.
I'm definite it's going to get worse. My only hope is that the destruction is not so extensive and so wide. I mean, psychologically, socially, economically, that and no life is possible after it. Because
Yeah,
in my hope and in my vision, even Israel as a political framework ceases to exist. People are going to still live here,
yeah,
Jews and Palestinians. We have to make it possible for them, for those people of the future, which is not
yeah,
maybe not far away. We have to make it possible for them
yeah.
to
Yes,
create something. Because life, there is a tomorrow. You started by asking about if there is a tomorrow. History tells us that there is always a tomorrow. So we
there's
have to
always
be
a tomorrow.
humble.
That's true. It's been a pleasure, Alon, speaking with you. Uh, we have been in contact off and on bilaterally, but I really wanted to get you on this program in order for our viewers here to be able to listen to your views. Alon obviously is like hot property on social media right now. His tweets go viral, and he speaks his mind. And it's his Twitter handle is at Alon underscore Mizrahi. Follow him if you haven't as yet, and you'll get really incisive insights into what's happening in Israel and also in the region. This is all from this episode. If you're looking for useful policy discussions, subscribe to the CESPA channel. That way, you get a heads up on new episodes. Until next time, goodbye and stay safe.